Well, hi there, everybody. Thank you for joining me today on my channel, Your Story Matters. And I'm really thrilled in today's episode to have a very special guest. This guest froze to death on a mountaintop, and he came back to tell the tale. My guest today is Peter Panagore, and we're going to dive right in and hear details of his story. So, Peter, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me, Julie. Much appreciated.
So, would you like to dive in and tell us some of the details of what happened to you?
Yes, it's a very large story, so I'll make it small, and I'll let everyone know where I was. I was ice climbing in Western Canada in March of 1980, and I made a mistake, and then we made a bunch of mistakes, and we got stuck up on the cliff, and I had extreme advanced hypothermia by the time we reached the third rappel, and we got stuck there, and there was no getting away or getting out of it. And by that point, the sun was hours away from rising, and it kept getting colder, and I advanced through the stages of hypothermia to the point at which I was falling asleep, but I would collapse and hit the rock and stand back up again because it hurt and it would jar me awake. And I stood back up this last time, and as I stood up, I had tunnel vision, and this big black circle began closing around my vision rapidly, and wherever I looked, it traveled with me. And I thought to myself that I was falling asleep again, but I'd never seen anything like it. It was unusual. And as it closed, I really thought I was just going to pass out, but I didn't. I awoke instead because as it went to darkness, suddenly I was in a greater darkness, and greater darkness was in front of me, and all of my pain was gone, and I was aware and awake, and I felt alive, but I knew that something was completely different because I felt like I had my eyes open, but I couldn't see the mountain, and I felt like I should be feeling the cold, but I couldn't feel the cold or anything else. And I was where the mountain was a moment before. There was this big, huge, cosmic sized dark expanse that is hard to measure in human terms. And way far in the distance, a pinprick of light appeared in this blackness, and this pinprick rapidly, faster than the speed of light, rushed toward me and enveloped me and communicated to me, "I'm taking you." And I put up resistance because I didn't know what was going on, but it took me anyway. I had no power. And then began a rather long journey uh, into the divine, where I experienced superpositioning. I was in two places at once. I was watching myself ascend inside this angelic being from an exterior point of view. But when I was inside the angelic being, where I also had a presence, when I looked over to where that point of view was, there was nothing there. But I could see myself looking. So I had non-local observation of myself, and I was also inside the angelic being without a physical body. I describe it as a light body, but all of this is metaphor. It is not, it's impossible for me to tell you about a thing, about a place where there are no things, not in language that is accurate. And so I had a human shaped body, but I was made of light particles, and I was transported inside this angelic being back up the journey that it had just come down. And when it got back to the edge of its origin for me, it either unfolded itself or popped me out. I'm not 100% sure what happened there, but I was inside a greater void. And in this greater void, I could see far to the edge of where infinity began. I could see further than I could ever see before. But I had no eyes, and I had no body. I had no brain, no blood, no bones. I was a consciousness, an orb. And this is also a metaphor. I was a consciousness where my thinking was myself, and I was ginormous, tiny in terms of this void. And but I was myself again, and I knew this was me. So I had no fear at all. I was content to being alone inside of this private heaven vault. And and as I was there, I could see in every direction at once an opening. The light opened itself in the darkness and poured like a waterfall, like a Niagara Falls, all this water coming down, but it was all light. And it wasn't just flowing downward, it was flow itself. And it was also made up of every color in the rainbow and the electromagnetic spectrum. And more than that, it was all of these like sequins of sparkly sequins. But simultaneously, it was also white light. So it was not flipping back and forth. It was both at the same time. And it was the most beautiful and attractive thing I've ever encountered. And I went to it. And as I touched it with my being, it opened me and inflowed inside of me and expanded me. And I had all of these experiences. I went through a hell of my own making from my just previous life. I suffered all the pain I gave away from the inside of the people I gave it to. I felt their pain simultaneous to experiencing my reasons and desires to cause them pain. And it turned out that that was my karma, that their pain attached, the pain I gave to them was actually mine. And but I didn't carry any pain anybody had given me in my life. All of that was gone. So what was my anchor, my weight around my soul was what I had done to others, but I wasn't judged. I judged myself in comparison to the beauty and the love and the power of the presence of the being who could see into me, and there was no dark spaces in me, no hiding places. And as it showed me myself, it continued to love me in an not just unconditional, but in an infinitely unconditional way. And when I went after I went through this time of seeing my limitation of my in comparison to unlimitedness, when I began to listen and experience the unlimitedness, all of the pain went away. I was healed and whole, and I expanded into this even larger size of my truer self, made of beauty, truth, love, joy, understanding, knowledge, peace, bliss, adoration, paradise, awe, and so much more. And I still had some part of self left because I didn't unfold into the infinity completely, but I was ginormous with love. And so much more happened. I could keep going, but I'm gonna take a break here because I want to know what you're thinking. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I can relate. I had a radical spiritual awakening, and it, even though, the details are different, the difficulty with trying to find words to express what you experience, and I use that word experience, it's so much more than an experience, as you know, right? Because even in the retelling of it, it carries and conveys and imbues the energy of infinity or source or whatever you want to call it.
mhm.
And it's almost, the story itself is almost a vehicle for the transmission of the light and the awakening power, and whatever you want to call that, grace, whatever you want to call it. But it really is very, very hard to put these things into words because, by its very nature, language is limited, and it doesn't come close to touching this meeting with the infinite, this stole of grace that happens, that then moves through your life, and then by extension moves through the lives of the people that you shared this with. And I know that you can relate to that, and I'm sure those people that listen to this and watch this episode will feel the same way. There's a definite transmission that happens in the retelling of the story. And I'm really interested to know one thing, Peter. Would you consider yourself to be a spiritual seeker, or somebody that was a believer prior to the near-death experience?
I was an experiencer before my experience. So I had a series of maybe six, I'd have to count them up, from early childhood until the year before I died, of other kinds of mystical experiences that left me psychologically changed every single time they happened, starting at 6 years old, 5 years old, I'm sorry. And So I was technically a believer because I was raised Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic, and I went to Catholic school. But uh, the truth of the light that lived inside me outweighed the truth of the authorities that were telling me what to do. And so none of those mystical experiences made sense to me. I went through them and I experienced them, and they left me with gifts, as they always do. And I lived in the world through those gifts, but I didn't understand why me or what was going on until I died. And when I died and came back that first time, all of all of a sudden I could look back and see, oh, oh yeah, but I had to give up my mental space. That was the thing that really I came back with no belief system at all. I experienced it. I know this, and nothing can ever change my mind because it has nothing to do with my brain. It's like way further on than that. And but I had to find a way to live in a cultural context. My whole family's Catholic or Orthodox, and how do I negotiate that? That's really where it was a bugaboo for me. Because
Yes.
I didn't want to tell anybody what happened to me. I didn't tell anybody what happened to me.
Yes, yes. So again, you and I are on the same page, because prior to my having a radical awakening, which happened in 1989, I'd had, out of body experiences, angelic visitations, all kinds of gifts were apparent to me as a child. And I've discovered that it was best not to tell everybody, because
Totally better not to.
yeah, because I felt conflicted, because I was raised as a Catholic. And again, because of a dogma, like you said, you hear this dogma, and I know it's well-meaning, much of what you're told,
Right.
but
It is.
that really didn't kind of sit well and relate to my direct experience of who Jesus was,
Mhm.
and what angelic beings were like, and these experiences that were outside of the sort of the normal realms of waking consciousness. So it becomes very difficult. So like you, I learned not to say anything. And then when I had the awakening, that was even more kind of challenging, because
Mhm.
the phenomenon just kind of exploded. And I would see and know things about people before they even said anything to me. And I'd be going about my day and hearing and seeing and perceiving these things that it's not always appropriate to say anything, right, for the most part.
Rarely even.
So
Yeah.
so it can be a real challenge, because you
Yeah.
also can start to feel like some weird character, or whatever you want to call it. And
Eccentric.
yeah, and like you don't fit in, and then how do you fit in, and when are you supposed to say anything, and should you say something? Not, you've got all of those things that go on, and like you, it took me a while to kind of integrate. I never questioned the authenticity of what I had seen and experienced directly at all. That has never been an issue. But I guess kind of getting over the fear of being seen,
Yeah.
and then revealing that knowing, was something that I did struggle with, because I think because of my Catholic background. But then what happens usually, certainly in my case, I got to a point where I just realized, it's now or never. I have to just kind of step into what I'm being called to, reveal who I am and share, because there is a need in the world today. There's certainly a need to hear these
Mhm.
experiences, which is what you're doing in terms of your show and everything. So can we just kind of go back a little bit to, so you had this direct meeting with Source or God, or whatever you want to, however you want to define that, and then and I'm sure you can speak at length about that, but when you came back to the body, what kind of happened then?
Total disorientation. I came back into this body, but it wasn't me. I knew that it wasn't me. And initially, it felt like imprisonment to me, exile and imprisonment and suffering. Because when I was dead, there was no suffering. It wasn't like, oh, that my thumb used to hurt. And now I remember that it hurt. There was no remembrance of the pain at all. And I took decades to integrate. I came back, it was 1980 when I died, and there was no information that I could find, and I was by myself. And so I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to be, I didn't, first of all, I didn't even know who I was anymore. I was, my psychology had been shattered, and I was trying to reassemble it with a new person. And I didn't know, I knew who I was, but and also I knew what I wasn't. And what I wasn't was this.
Yeah.
And who I was this other being, this higher self that was the dominant factor of my perception of the world. And so it was like previously, I was just thinking it would be like being out in a watching a sporting event, and you're inside the field, and the ball and the wall is to your back, and you're inside the field and everybody can see you. And that's how I was before I died. And after I died, I was outside the field looking through a peephole, but everybody thought I was inside the field, and I just wasn't. And
Yeah.
it was a painful, difficult, depressing, isolating darkness of uh, feeling exiled. And I found that the only way to save myself was to return myself to the divine, to the source, to the infinite as much as I possibly could by going interiorly and using meditation and Kriya Yoga practices to create a chamber inside myself for my own survival. It was really so that I could function.
Yes. Yes.
People were doing crazy stuff all the time, all around me, things that hurting each other. Well, what are you doing that for? I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, well, what's that all about?
Yes. 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 I can relate because I did the same. Through a lucid dream, I was given this initiation that, was life changing. And then when I came back to the body, I really had to stay in that place, because if I came out of that place, it felt like death. It felt like
Yes.
I wasn't going to survive. And so, like you, I was doing yoga, meditation, repeating the mantra that I've been given, and really building that kind of inner sanctum to be strong enough to be able to go out and deal with whatever I was dealing with. And then at a certain point, it's almost like everything becomes integrated, and then it's easier to be in the world, I guess is the best way of putting it. And for me, the saving grace has been through service, through sharing, through speaking about these things, through being open about everything, rather than feeling like I have to sort of preserve and protect, what I've been given. So would you relate to that?
I do relate to that. After I died, I went to divinity school to study mysticism, and then I ended up in the church. And I found that even though I kept my mouth shut about it, I still lived it every single day. I really didn't need to talk about it. Because the people couldn't hear me. So there was not going to be any benefit for them or for me. So I kept my mask on, but I lived a life of service. I was serving the church. I was serving my community, working with the homeless, working with the poor, working with domestic violence, working with the grieving and the sick, and everybody who needed my help, I gave help to. And I found that in the action of giving, I found a different kind of prayer life, a different kind of energy came to me through that process. But I also simultaneously was diving ever deeper inward in order to carve a bigger chamber inside myself. And then I had a whole series of mystical experiences, angelic out of body things between my first NDE and my second one. And after the second one, I had already become through, I call it grace, but uh, that's such a tiny word for such a big thing. I had become pretty well integrated through my practice, I hadn't really come out yet. I came out to the congregation where I was at, and I was working in television, and I wasn't out in television at all. And then I died again. And after the second death, I stopped praying every day to go home. I was okay with being here, and suddenly I'm integrated. And now I feel like this was in 2015 when I had this heart attack, and I afterwards I had nothing else to lose. I felt like, okay, everybody in my town knows this happened to me. I was working in New York City, and these with these networks, and the people in the networks encouraged me to write this book, and I wrote this book. And now, and my book was coming out when I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital, having just died the day before, when Amazon released my book a month early. And so at that point, I'm like, and then okay, then the phone call comes from the TV station that a new corporation had purchased the station, and that my show after 15 years was getting squeezed out. And I was like, okay, now what am I going to do? And but I felt all in. I know what my death is. I know where I'm going. I know who I am. I don't. My problem about all of this wasn't as the same with you. You know what your experience is. It's the world around you that's the troubling place. And so I decided it's time to move, change my messaging system and become much more direct.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that. I love that's so been my story too. To stop kind of tap dancing or trying to minimize or hide, and to be fully out there with it. Because the other thing that I did realize, and I must be dense because it took me a while to figure this out, but even if you have a near-death experience or radical awakening, even if you're not speaking about it to other people, everybody feels the energy of awakening and they respond likewise.
They do.
So
they already know.
they already know. I'm feeling it all over as we're saying this, and I would see proof of it. So soon after my awakening, I was working in a government school here in the Bahamas, it's a tough gig. And so I would be teaching these students that were primarily of, I'd say, sort of Orthodox Christian belief,
Mm.
And I obviously wouldn't share, what had happened to me with this master yogi in a lucid dream. I would have probably been.
Yeah, they would have fired you.
They would have
something
fired
wrong.
me. But I cannot tell you the number of times I'd have students coming into the art room. I taught art, and they would come in and they would do pranam, which is so outside of the Christian, this whole pranam. And then they at one time a boy was cleaning a board and he was going om like this. And I knew he was hearing the mantra because I was repeating the mantra Om Namah Shivaya in the art room all day long, the whole time. He was hearing it, and he was, and those are just two examples. I mean, the number of times I saw evidence via these teenagers that would normally not be speaking about such things, and I've also heard it from people that I've spoken to. They can feel intuitively or energetically, or however you want to put it, your state. So your state speaks ahead of you before you say anything. So it took me, a little while to figure that one out. But I guess we finally get to that place, right? And then you say, what the heck? I'm all in, and I'll do whatever I'm asked to do. So if something lands in me, there's an intuitive prompt to do it, I just do it. I don't worry about it.
Non-attached to the end, to the result, just work in the process.
Yeah, exactly. So let's everybody where you're at today and what's going on today, and what you're working on. You do have your YouTube channel, I know. What else do you have going on?
Well, I run an international group on Sundays on Zoom of people who've had all sorts of mystical experiences, spiritually transformative experiences, and we have 5 rules. We have humility, compassion, kindness, experience, and authenticity, and everybody has the platform. I'm the salon director, but everybody has voice, and we learn from each other every week. And we've been meeting for 3 years. We probably altogether, I bet we have 100 people, but maybe we get 30 or 40 a week, depending on, because people have lives, you know. And then on Tuesdays, I teach Kriya Yoga on Zoom. I do meditation Mondays and Wednesdays, and I do a little teaching, but mostly I've been trying to teach Kriya Yoga, which I privately practiced for 40 years, and masked. I didn't tell anybody I was doing this because I worked in the Christian church and I wanted to keep my
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've been teaching that energy. It's basically energy work to carve a space inside yourself. And the last thing I'm working on, which is really the number one thing I'm working on, is my international Audible best-selling book got picked up by some producers in Hollywood 3 years ago, and I've been working with them for these past 3 years as I've been writing Act 1 and Act 3, and I have one chapter left, and then it's in their ball court probably beginning next year, and then it's off to the races for making they're talking about a feature film and a sequel. They just optioned my next book or streaming series. So it's a pretty it's been a really great process for me as a writer to learn to write in a more a plot-driven emotional style. It's memoir, but I'm writing it as I love literature, so I'm writing it in a literary form. And these two producers have worked me very diligently and with great care and difficulty to get me to a place to be more of an emotional writer. And it's been beautiful. That's what I'm doing. It's a beautiful process.
Wonderful. So what's the name of your first book?
My first book is 2 Minutes for God, and it's a collection of 365 stories that I wrote for the TV. I had a 2-minute TV spot on network TV, and so that's the first book, and that was a bestseller. And my second book is Heaven is Beautiful, and that's an international bestseller. My third book, I haven't they optioned this book, and I haven't even finished it yet. And so hopefully what's going to happen is I'm going to finish my part of it this December for the movie, and then get fingers crossed for an advance from my publisher to take the time next year to write it as fast as I can. But oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that's impressive.
Well, I was an English major as an undergraduate, and writing has been I'm dyslexic. Okay, so first of all, I was going to go into architecture. My whole family's artistic, and my mom painted, and my dad drew, and everybody's artsy. But I chose words, and so I was an English major, and writing and communication on my LinkedIn page. My top thing is I'm in communication, and I found, and I'm going to swing back around to the energy that linguistic communication is a secondary tool for me in the communication of the divine, because it's really the energy itself speaks for itself, and it's impossible to hide it if you're living in it.
Yes. People. Yes. I mean, we could probably end the conversation there, but that's exactly it. That's it, 100%. You know, and people feel it, and that in itself is service, right? Because you're bringing that into people's lives that maybe wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to. Because not everybody can go off to India and study at an ashram or meet a master or whatever. So you're actually bringing all of that, into manifestation, which is the greatest gift, I think.
Yeah. I think it's the gift the world needs, and my hope is that, and I'm just a vehicle. I don't want people to misunderstand what I just said. That my survival in the world necessitated me to aim at the one thing, the single oneness, and that then it began to live through me. And as I live with this in my life, the reason why I feel when other people feel the energy is because they already have it inside themselves. Everybody already has it inside themselves, but not everybody's been activated because it's buried underneath the layers. And so my goal is to as many people as possible, to let them touch it and feel it for themselves. And then they don't need me anymore, because this energy is its own guru. It's its own teacher. It's its own, all you need to do is learn to be with it. And it is the guide of all life. And all over the world, people have been saying that for all through history, all mystics, we all say the same thing.
Yes, yes, because I always, the way I put it is this energy, this awakened power is supremely intelligent, and it knows how to get your attention and push you if you need to be pushed, or create these events that will make you stop and just see what's going on in your life. And it's once it starts, once this movement starts, there's really no closing it down again. If you're honoring it, and if you want to go with it, and if you're not trying to resist or push it away, then it will just take you in the most amazing places, and open doors that you would never have imagined. And it's just the most, for me, it's the only way I can live. And I welcome it, and I welcome the opportunity to be able to serve it and to, help other people, like you said, see that within themselves, for themselves, and let this magic sort of do its work. It's incredible.
So super intelligent. It's so much smarter than me. What I think I need isn't really what I need. I just think I do. And it knows so much. It knows everybody's everything, not just on Earth, and not just humans. It's so supreme. And so the process is surrender. And a lot of, I had the same problem, is that I was so angry when I came back. I felt like I was imprisoned, even though I chose to come back. So like, it's totally my fault and my choice. But that didn't mean that I was like a petulant child screaming at, I didn't want that cereal. I want the other cereal.
Yeah.
I know I told you I wanted that. That's not what I want. So I had this anger that I was aiming at the divine, even while I was digging deep to find my way home again. And that it's okay to have resistance to the loss of the egoic self, because you need an egoic self attachment to that to function in the world. But ultimately, it can't satisfy anything of what you actually are. And further, when it turns out that as it dies, breath by breath, silence by silence, piece by piece, eventually a person I came to see clearly that I didn't actually lose it. I still have my egoic self. I'm just not attached to it. Yes. And because I'm not attached to it, I'm also not attached to what I need in the world. I have goals, and I work, and I pay my bills and everything else like everybody else. But the process of being in the presence is the power that brings me to the future that's next, not I make choices and decisions, but as long as I'm in this power and the presence now, I can trust what's coming next.
Yes. Yes. So the way I put it is, the personal narrative, the story of me and mine, isn't the one sitting in the driving seat, kind of, thinking it's in charge of everything and running the show, essentially.
Right. It wants to, and it thinks it can, but it can't really. You reminded me, and I think it was St. Augustine who said the three worst words in the language are me, my, mine. I'm pretty sure that's from him.
Yes, yes. And what happens is, even despite that, despite maybe your best efforts to hold on to me, mine, something bigger moves in. I always, the way I describe it is like this vast ocean, because I live in the Bahamas, I'm surrounded by the ocean. It's like this vast ocean moved in and broke down the walls. And there was nothing I could do but go with it, because I wanted to be in it more than I wanted to hold on to my story.
Yep.
Because the thing as well is whenever I was kind of holding on to the story, there's always this feeling of discontent. It's never quite enough. You're always looking for more.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's kind at a certain point, it's kind of easy just to say, just let it go and realize it's a much bigger life, and a much greater sort of quality of life when you're just going with the flow of grace, and you're letting that figure out where to take you. And it's really beautiful. And that's to me where the kind of I use the word power, but it has a negative connotation. But to me, that's where the power and the mystery is, and I don't want it to be any other way at all. So there's these beautiful, I would say, overlaps and intersections, right, with respect to a near-death experience and a radical awakening. And I suspect the kind of because the outcome's the same, then I guess the need, so to speak, was great in both of us, because I always felt like I was looking for something much bigger than me, and I didn't know where to find it in my family. So there's always this longing to find someone who knew the truth, or something that could point to the truth. And I'm sure it's because of that, then, we're led to these experiences of awakening or having a near-death experience, or whatever it is that kind of shows us what we're looking for.
Yes, I think that that's true, except for maybe with near-death experience in general, because a lot of people are not seeking spirituality and they step out in front of the bus, and then suddenly they're like, "What was that?" And now their atheists become knowers, and their lives change completely. But yeah, I think that there's a large portion of the population who are naturally born mystics who have for some reason or other, maybe it's the nanotubes and the connection between the spirit and the brain and the God spot of the brain. Maybe that's where it's at. But there seems to be people who are led in this direction who can't not go that way. I could even as a kid, I could not go that way. I was already knowing that there was something bigger than me.
Yes, and constantly looking. Even though I didn't know what I was looking for, I just knew
This
that.
this part didn't, but this part did.
Yes. And also, I think that also kind of makes you feel a bit strange or unusual or weird, that you seem to be the only. Well, I used to think I was the only one that felt that way, and what's wrong with everybody else? They seem to be so happy with accumulation or whatever it is, that drives most people. And I just never had any interest in any of those things. So again, that can be pretty lonely. I mean, things are changing. I'm very happy the world is changing, and there's more access, and you can find books and, online programs and stuff like that really help. Certainly when I was younger, there was nothing. I think I found one yoga book or something.
Right, exactly.
um, you really would have to go searching really long and hard to find something that would help. But it was hard. It was hard to find. And in some ways, maybe that's a good thing, because it forces you, I think, to go more sort of inside yourself and find that silence within, and listen to that and trust that and live true to that. So, but yeah, I guess we all end up, getting to the place we need to be, and then something shifts and something happens, and then we go from there.
And
So
in the end, it all turns out okay. I'm going to ruin the ending for everybody. The story, everyone's story, ends beautifully.
yes, indeed. So I'm guessing you did touch on this, that you work with people and you help people who are maybe getting ready to transition and to leave, correct?
I did. I do some of that work now. Mostly, what I do now is I help people integrate their mystical, spiritual experiences and their near death experiences. And but I did spend a lot of my life as a reverse midwife, helping people on the exit, not on the entrance.
Yeah.
It's a Dying is can be difficult. It can be quick. It can be excruciating, and the people who are left behind suffer the most after the person passes. And so it's not just helping people pass over, it's attendance to those who grieve. And after my first NDE, I was a young pastor, and I hadn't learned enough about what the dying process and the grieving process does to people. And so I started like telling people it is okay, they're fine, I don't know what you're crying about. I wasn't quite as blunt as that, but I learned pretty young that grief is a necessary part of life, and that I grieve as well. I grieve people that I'm grieving one of my buddies who died only a couple of weeks ago. I know where he is. He was a near-death experiencer. He knows where he is too. And
Yes.
but I find that helping people going out the door is very rewarding, in that I watch them awaken before they die. So lots of people awaken just before they die. They have an experience. Somebody comes to visit them, and they're like, oh my gosh, the world's not solid anymore. And to be privy to those kind of private moments was an honor in my life.
That's beautiful. Really beautiful. Yeah. And that must be so helpful if people are, scared, if they're having you there, to help them kind of navigate those last days or weeks. Must be very helpful.
It can be. Some people want me there, but mostly or have wanted me there, but as a talisman, not as a, for the most part, I know when I can help and I know when I can't. And it doesn't really make a difference to me. If what they need me to be is just sitting there, then that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. And so can we come back around to you said that you have a meeting every week is that on Sunday?
On Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern time on Zoom.
On Zoom.
And the link is at my website. It's called Mystic Tea Salon. A salon is historically a gathering of bon vivants, like writers and chemists and poets and painters, and to have an intellectual conversation. And so I call that a salon, but it's a mystic salon, and it's for people who are seekers and people who are finders, and who feel excluded from society because you can't talk about it in public. It's a free place to talk. And people, we have shamans and people who've had psychedelic experiences, and people who've meditated their way in, and people who've had divine grace experiences and near-death experiences, all sorts of types. And it is a place of crowd-sourced wisdom.
Nice. So anybody can join, correct?
Anybody can come. It's open, and often people stick around.
Nice. And so what time is it, did you say?
11 a.m. Eastern time.
Oh, Eastern. Okay, good.
New York City.
Excellent.
I'm on the water too. I'm on the same ocean as you, not far. Well, far by nautical mile, but not far by water. I mean,
so where are you based?
I'm on the coast of Maine, on the water on the coast.
Oh, nice.
And so we're right. Yeah, I can look south, and that's out that way as you are.
Yeah, lovely. Well, I think I'm going to plan to join you one of these. So you have a meeting on this coming Sunday, right?
Oh, you have this meeting this coming Sunday. And if I'm away or I'm writing, there's also a link to Mystic Chai Salon, which is run by my friend Dr. Ken Gilligan, who he's a retired physician, but he's very knowledgeable, and especially in Eastern traditions, very knowledgeable.
Nice. And then how does that work? Do you follow a theme each week, or do you just kind of go with the flow of what is coming up?
Little of both. So the launching place is on Sunday mornings. It comes from whatever I talk about at what I call Not Church, which is a place where I do my scholastic essay writing around. Right now I'm working in from the Aramaic and the mystical language of Jesus through this, working with this guy named Neil Douglas Klotz, who's an Aramaic translator, and working my way back through the Gospels, the Koine Greek gospels that everybody knows, and the meaning is entirely different. What Jesus is saying and what everybody thinks he's saying is 99% out of the time not the same thing. And that was very clear to me when I came back from my NDE, that Jesus was like a near-death experiencer, and nobody got him. Nobody understood what he was talking about. But I was like, oh my God, he's like me. And I bring in the Buddhist and Hindu and Islam and Judaism and Sikhism, wherever I can find overlaps. And so I extract the principles of the mystical principles, and then I show that, oh yeah, see, it's over here in the Bhagavad Gita, and it's over there in the Upanishads, and trying to do this, show that there's this simpatico-ness between oneness teachers and traditions that aim toward the unit, the reunion with the source, as opposed to dogma and doctrine that we're all taught.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because the thing is when truth is spoken, doesn't matter what orientation in terms of sort of religion or whatever or background. It's a felt sense. You can feel that and again, the energy of that speaks for itself inside of you. There's a recognition, and that is unmistakable. And it doesn't, it's consistent, right?
And yes, it's consistent across people and across traditions.
Yes. Beautiful. Well, Peter, thank you so much for joining me today. Before we kind of wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to share with viewers so that they know where to find you and how to connect with you and all of those good things?
I'm at peterpanagore.love, and all of my links lead through there, books and YouTube and everything else. peterpanagore.love. And if you want to talk to me, please hit me up. I'm available.
Brilliant. Thank you. And of course, I'll add the link to the show notes and anything else you'd like me to add, Peter.
All you need is love.
All you need is love is right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. I've loved every second. So I would love to continue the conversation at some point in the future. It'd be great to do that, to continue. And thank you everybody for joining us. As always, I really value your time. If you enjoy this episode, then please let folks know. And if you haven't subscribed, then please subscribe. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Take it easy, everybody. Be well. Bye for now.